From KPFK in Los Angeles, California, Valley Free Radio in Florence, and WMBR in Cambridge, Massachusetts, WNUC in Detroit, and BikeTalk.org worldwide, this is Bike Talk.
Bike Talk.
Welcome to Bike Talk. I'm Taylor Nichols.
I'm Nick Richard.
We keep getting great listener emails about our last couple episodes, and this email is from Eric Brightwell, and Eric is a co-host of a great podcast called Nobody Drives in LA, which, believe me, I wish that were true, but Eric's podcast is great, and he's a listener of the show, and he said, love the show. The debate between Taylor and Kyle, the bike lane hater, a couple of episodes back was really good, though it got me a bit worked up. And I got to tell you, Eric, it got me worked up too. I was actually thinking about writing an email after it, but then the next episode came out in which the imagined fan fiction sequel was submitted that made more arguments, which was great. But I still had one point I thought that was worth sharing. And Eric goes on to say that by Kyle Brazil, the quote unquote bike lane haters reasoning, because bikes are in the bike lane, which is further to the right, they are out of the driver's vision. Following that logic, pedestrians should lose their sidewalks because they are even further to the right. And he goes on to say that that's absurd. You know, we would never say pedestrians lose their sidewalk because they are out of the driver's immediate line of vision, except, of course, when they turn right across that path. So I thought that was a great point that Eric made. And I want to thank Eric for his show, Nobody Rides in LA, and for his email.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And we had Eric on one episode. So if you search Eric Brightwell on Bike Talk, you should find that episode.
Right.
Another listener wrote in. This is Ross. It's also about Kyle. Kyle brought up the idea of vehicular cycling as an alternative to bike lanes for a variety of reasons. Rather than drive my car to work every day and have to pay for parking, gas, and the overall inconvenience, I bought a Class 3 e-bike and have been using it to commute from my home in East Hollywood to the office in downtown LA, which is 5.5 miles one way. When riding, I choose to take the lane because 1, state and city law allows cyclists to do so, and 2, it feels safer because on my Class 3, I reach pedaling speeds up to 31 miles per hour and therefore feel safer speeding along in the middle of the lane rather than off to the side so that motorists will see me and use the other lane to pass. However, because of my vehicular cycling, I regularly get interactions from irate motorists, many of whom yell at me to get on the sidewalk, honk at me, or close past me. This happens almost every day, even though I carefully follow traffic rules and basically ride my bike as if I were driving my car. Ross goes on to say, just last week while commuting on my e-bike, a guy in a large truck honked, then close past me. When I caught up to him at a stop sign, he told me that I need a driver's license to use the road. He also told me to stop being entitled by using my bike on the road. Yesterday, when I was on my little e-scooter going east on Fountain towards Vermont, Ross uses a range of micromobility. Using the full lane, as the numerous signs indicate is allowed, a driver honked, then close past me, using his middle finger to indicate that I should move to the side on that narrow portion of the street lined with parked cars. What it comes down to is...
Hold on. Is that what that means? Is that what a middle finger means?
You're indicating that you're in the wrong lane.
I got it. Okay. I'm going to start using that. Yeah.
I think it's for one-lane roads.
Oh, but I'm pumped.
What it comes down to is that if LA had a fully connected network of well-designed, safe bike lanes, I would be using them instead of taking the lane in the face of motorists' ignorant wrath. That's why I fully support the proposal to add bike lanes to Fountain Avenue and plan to attend the West Hollywood City Council meeting tomorrow to express said support. And that's Ross. Thank you for your show, Ross.
Yeah. You know, he also says that he goes out of his way to ride on certain streets that have protected bike lanes. And I do the same thing. I often go a few blocks north out of my way to ride in an area that does have protected bike lanes. However, as we've talked about many times, when there is no infrastructure, I do think it's safer to practice vehicular cycling and ride in the lane. But I guess that's a decision that every person has to make for themselves.
I think you have to be somebody who can handle motorists yelling at you, giving you the one lane sign.
I love that. We also got an email from our longtime listener and our resident doctor, Rick Bosacker. And Rick wrote a really great email, I thought. Let me read it here real quick. It says, this might be a question for Jim Pocrass. what are the legal implications for organizing a community bike ride, bike bus, or other non-sponsored event in the States? I guess he means America because he's down in New Zealand. I've led a weekly ride in New Zealand for 5 years without much bother about waivers, etc. It's a different environment there, though, and I'd rather not be sued for everything I own because someone came off their bike on a taco ride. Many thanks, Rick. Jim, what are the implications for doing a non-sponsored event? I mean, obviously, if Toyota or Schwinn Bicycles does a big event, they will have all that. But if you're doing, like he said, a taco ride, what does the organizer have to prepare for?
Thank you for asking me to be here again. And what are they really asking in this email? They're asking two different types of things. One is, what is the liability for a bicycle event? And then the second thing is, would I be responsible for it as a member of the organization putting on the bicycle event? Liability against that event would include things like negligence, knowing about hazards such as potholes or cracks or dangerous intersections, or large sinkholes or problems that were on the route. They would have to, warn them about it. What can they do to protect themselves? A waiver that sometimes is shoved to, somebody to go sign, and it's like 5 pages long. Nobody reads it. You don't know what it has. And what are they really waiving? Does a waiver really help an event and really protect them against liability for their negligence? It helps, but it does not, protect them thoroughly for that.
So if I'm leading a taco ride, can I just write it up myself and say, this is a waiver for the Tuesday night taco ride. I take no responsibility for any negligence on this ride. Sign here.
If you were asking me that as a lawyer, I would say do not do that, because California, and I went through a bunch of other states to see how they handle waivers, they are strictly construed. They have to have clarity in language, clearly stating what is being released, whether it's negligence. They have to state the scope of the release and the risks, and also it has to be voluntarily signed and understood. And it has to be in big language and things like that. So I would recommend that before any type of event that you talk to a lawyer, have them prepare up a simple but clear waiver, and then make sure that it's signed by each person.
There are social rides every night of the week in a lot of places. We have listeners like Detroit. It's amazing the amount of bike culture that goes on there. LA, of course, New York City, everywhere. I feel like as a lawyer, you have to say that. But I mean, has anybody ever been sued on a taco ride?
There's a big difference between a taco ride and an event that is an organized event. An organized event where you're having, hundreds of riders. They're going on a course, and they have to have a particular course that they're following. There's a lot more to consider with regard to that than just the normal ride that you would on a Friday night or something like that, or with a group of people. The event people need to go through the course and make sure that there aren't any dangerous conditions or potholes in the route that is being taken. And if they are, they have a duty to warn them or put up a sign or a cone or something like that.
But if I post the ride on my Instagram or on Bike Talk's Instagram or something like that, and it is just 20 people going out riding on a Tuesday night, am I possibly liable because I'm the one that posted the ride, even though I'm not necessarily leading the ride?
I would say probably not. A disorganized ride where it isn't actually set down with the route that they're going to be taking. You wouldn't be providing people on the route as to where you're supposed to go and putting up signage and checking for dangerous conditions along the roadway.
Right. So it sounds like it's a little bit of a gray area then on how organized that ride would be. I hope, Rick, this answers it for you and for our listeners about, the level of organization where you might require a waiver from a lawyer. But non-formalized ride to get a taco on Tuesday might be okay just to go out with some of your friends and ride.
Yep, that's what I would say.
Jim Pocrass, thanks again from Pocrass and De Los Reyes. The last couple of weeks, we've been talking with and about Diane Alisa and her book, A Love Letter to Suburbia.
We also spoke with quote unquote bike lane hater. But one of the great things about Diane's book is she attributes much of her information that she disseminates to Chuck Marohn. And if you are a regular listener to Bike Talk, you know Chuck Marohn. Chuck, welcome back to Bike Talk.
It's really cool to be back. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming. Chuck, of course, is the author of Confessions of a Traffic Engineer and the founder of Strong Towns. And Strong Towns is a bottom-up revolution.
That's what it is. It's a bottom-up revolution. Yeah, I started writing a blog in 2008, and that grew into this nonprofit, which has grown into a somewhat international revolution of people who are trying to make changes in their cities from the bottom up. We have 300 local conversations, local chapters working around the world to implement these ideas. And our latest one is in Uganda, which don't ask me to explain how that happened, but it blows my mind. I'm doing a podcast in a few days with someone from India. I'm kind of continually shocked by where our ideas have shown up.
Well, don't you think that means that the world is really hungry for these ideas?
Yes. One of the things that I feel very blessed about is that I started doing what I'm doing at a time when there was a huge void. So I could write a blog and nobody was blogging. And when people found blogs, it's like, oh my gosh, here's one with, 5 years of stuff. I think there's long been this void. We've been in a really nice position to fill that void with what we think are productive bottom-up solutions that you can be part of creating in your place. And that does give it a certain power and edge that is different than like vote for this party or vote for this person or outsource your future to this philosophy. There's a lot of hunger for what can I do out my own front steps.
Before we get to Diane's book and the bike hater and all that, what are the bullet points? What are the key, the top 10 list for David Letterman of Strong Towns?
So many of the things we ask traffic engineers to do are actually not engineering decisions. They're actually like public policy decisions. What's the purpose of this street? Is it to A, move cars and freight really quickly, or B, provide a platform where we're gonna build shops and businesses and homes and make it a wealth-creating place for the community? That's actually a political decision, not an engineering decision. Yet we outsource that decision to engineers like all the time. Those are the kind of insights I've tried to bring to the table in that book.
Diane Alisa just joined us. Diane, I want you to meet Chuck, and Chuck, you meet Diane.
How you doing? So nice to meet you. Yep.
Yeah.
You are all over my book.
Right, he's waving your book right now. And as Chuck said, Chuck and Diane sounds a little bit like a John Mellencamp song.
It'd be a really nice redo.
Diane, I want to bring you into the conversation really quick. What were some of the defining aspects of Chuck's book that you thought were so important to include in your book, A Love Letter to Suburbia?
There are built value systems in the way that we are constructing cities, and everything is shifted towards the car. So when I was reading his book, Confessions of a Recovering Engineer, I just felt like I was being empathized with, because that's how I feel as a driver, that there's so many things that are manipulating me into certain behaviors, and I've always just felt like I was a bad driver.
Right.
But there are actual design elements that I have to have discipline in to not do, like speed limits, for example. That a road should be designed as the speed, not shame a driver into following it.
Last week on the show, we had a bike lane hater who said over and over that he speeds. And I tried to get him to understand that we need to then reconfigure our streets so that people like him can't speed.
Yeah, I just think it's really great that Chuck's actually given language to it. That's amazing, to be able to say that something is a strode, a street, a road, just the defining things. You can say, okay, I don't actually want a strode in front of my house.
Right.
It's great.
Did we define strode already in this conversation?
Chuck, you want to take strode? It's your word.
I feel like I probably have to at this point. I was trying to explain to my fellow engineers that there was a difference between building a highway and building a local street. And the language that I came to, and you can see this in like a really old TED Talk I did, where I didn't use the word strode because I hadn't come up with it yet. But I'm like, look, there's a difference between a road, which is about moving people quickly between two places, and a street, which is actually the framework, the platform for building that place. You know you've succeeded with a road if people are moving quickly back and forth. You know you succeeded with a street if it's building wealth and people are showing up and investing there and shopping there and doing the things that building homes and doing the things that you want to do. And then I hit upon this idea of like the combination of the two, the STROAD, the street road hybrid. We call this the futon of transportation. It's a futon's an uncomfortable couch that makes into an uncomfortable bed. And a STROAD is a piece of transportation infrastructure that tries to both move people quickly and attract investment and wealth. And when you look at those, just like a futon, it does neither of them very well.
The four of us are all on the same page about the kind of design we want to see change. And one of the things we talked about with this bike lane hater last week was it has taken us 15 years just to get to the point of a design for a certain street. And this is one street in one city. So why do you think it's taking so long to see some of these design changes, do you all think?
I just don't think the public is aware of urbanism. Like, it's just not thought about. We've just kind of accepted the status quo that the suburbs are the American dream and the car equals freedom. And we're greatly suffering from it. And we still haven't collectively said, oh, it's the way that we're building our environments. So that was the point of my message, to reach a general audience and explain how all of the things that they're really bothered about in America are related to environment. And I personally think that if they are made aware, that they would shift course very quickly. That was the theory of the book. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's true. Nick and I often say, the red pill in the matrix, once you sort of see it, you can't unsee it, of how much we give over to the car.
It's the orange pill.
Oh, is it the orange pill, really, or not?
That's how I've heard it, orange pill.
Diane, you told me that there's a specific pill for urbanism.
Yes, orange.
There you go.
Jason Slaughter on his YouTube channel, everything is orange.
That's where it comes from, is Jason, and they take the orange pill. Yeah.
Great. Well, I stand corrected.
We have said a lot of times, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
But now there's a pill for that. And then you take the pill, and then what? What happens? You go outside.
I went through the stages of grief. I feel like once you figure it out, you're just so sad and upset about everything that's happened, and it feels a little bit impossible to fix. That's kind of how Jason Slaughter has viewed it. He's like, leave America, it's over. I don't feel that way at all, but I think there's initial anger. Then you have to grieve with what's happened, and you have to have acceptance. And my message is one of hope. I really do think that it would happen in a very short amount of time, because we already kind of have neighborhoods that have the foundations of villages, of walkability. They're just not being allowed to legally build the way that they need to build. And so for me, I just think cutting the red tape and having a general vision of where we're going would help quite a bit to create these walkable municipalities, which is the goal of my book.
Parking reform, zoning reform, things like that. Yeah. We've often said that bike advocacy makes strange bedfellows. Is there a left-right divide, Chuck, between safe streets and car-dominated streets?
This is a really interesting question. Obviously, there's a left-right divide over cities. You just look at the political map, and there's a left-right divide. But we certainly have two different understandings of what it means to live in a place and how that relates to what we consider good investments and growth investments and that kind of thing. I remember when I was younger and working to figure some of this stuff out myself. Remember the old Fox News host, Glenn Beck?
Sure.
And now he's doing other things. I didn't really watch him then, and I don't know what he's doing now. But I remember he did this thing where he presented a traditional city. Here's the way that we could live. And he starts going through it and explaining. And he had renderings and layouts, and he wanted to get people to move to a place that looked like this. And he's describing from a conservative, wholesome values, sense of community, basically like a small town. Look, we'd have corner stores, and we'd have a coffee shop you could walk to, and you could bike here if you wanted to. And he's going through this thing, and I'm like, this is in the heart of the thick, deep, red, conservative, messaging type machine. This is what is coming out of that. I think we all have different lived experiences And I think your bike lane hater is, probably talking his book in many ways. Like, this is what I know, this is what I live in, this is the good thing. But when you can actually get people talking about it and pointing to things and recalling their own memories and their own things that they like, and what you end up with is what Walt Disney built on Disneyland, which is a recreation of his experience growing up.
Right.
And that is a very universal human experience of having a place that is meaningful. And I don't think there's a left-right divide on that. I think there's an absence of functionally doing that, but I don't think that there's a left-right breakdown on the desire for that outcome.
Yeah, everybody wants a safe neighborhood street.
Our Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, who's also the head of NASA, is against funding bike infrastructure. And I think that's somehow partly ideological. But
can I tell you though? I'm probably.
I know what you're going to say.
I'm probably like 99% against federal funding of local bike infrastructure too. Not because I don't like local bike infrastructure. I do. I think cities should be funding it ahead of everything else that they're doing from a transportation standpoint. Mm-hmm. I just think that when the federal government funds local bike infrastructure, what you get is the dumbest local bike infrastructure. And you don't get the really easy, tactical, quick things that we could do that would make biking a lot easier for people. When you fund bike infrastructure at the federal level, what you get are big, federally scaled bike infrastructure projects. So you get a big bridge over a Strode, you get a tunnel under a Strode, you get a large regional trail system. It's just damn hard to walk across the street here. And you know what would help that? Like $400 of paint and maybe a couple cones. We could get out and do that tomorrow. The federal government stuff doesn't scale to that level. The cities that have actually undertaken that level of infrastructure investment see massive improvements in biking and walking overnight. And I think the federal stuff crowds out the good investments is what it does. I think every city should have a tactical urbanism department. And if you said, we don't have the money for that, I would let people in my public works department go until I had enough money to do it. Or I would redirect them to actually do it instead.
I feel like what's going on at the federal level is sort of a mutant strain of your philosophy, where they're trying to get rid of the federal government, but they're trying to privatize it.
Let me be very clear. I'm not advocating for austerity. I don't think austerity is the answer. What I think is a shifting of feedback loops down to the local level. If we just focus on bike infrastructure, will get us a lot more bike infrastructure that was a lot more valuable, a lot more quickly. Don't ask me to defend what this administration is doing at the federal level, and don't ask me to defend what the last administration did at the federal level. I'm not buying into any of it. It's really whack. But, what do you do?
Right. Well, I would argue that sometimes local leaders need a little, push in the right direction from the federal government to show, what is possible.
I do think that the way we define assistance at the federal level right now is money. And I think what money does is it makes us stupid. I would rather see technical assistance and help. I mean, if the federal government wanted to help people set up technical urbanism programs, that would be amazing. But that's not the way that the federal government works or is set up to work.
The argument to the red side of the aisle, who is completely against walkability at this point, is that you actually are being trapped in a system where you are in a corporate oligarchy. All of your power is being taken away because they're telling you the car is freedom and it's not.
Right.
I've gotten to the age where I thought people were old when I was young. So I'm 52 now. And the interesting thing about where I'm at in life is that I can have conversations with younger people and with older people, and you do it as peers in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because when you think of the anti-bike lane older person, one of the ways that I like to talk about this that kind of reaches people is to say, those damn kids these days, they're on their phone. They don't get out and walk. They're not biking around. Remember when we used to bike up to the stores 3 miles away? It was not a big deal and da-da-da-da. And you can start this kind of common experience that everybody my age and older had, which was a certain degree of freedom that allowed you to grow up and mature in a way that people in my age group and older think is very healthy. That's a really good transition to talk about the environment that we built. Diane says everybody can support building around kids as like the indicator species. Like, does this work for kids? If it does, yes or no. But I don't know they often start there until you have a conversation about how are we trying to raise our kids? Like, what are the outcomes that we would like to see with a healthy generation of young people? What you often get to is independence, the ability to kind of problem solve, the ability to like grow into adulthood. You don't have to spend much time in our built environment to recognize that we've completely destroyed that. And we can hate on, the moms and their SUVs who are setting up play dates. But the reality is that's a rational response to the things that we've built. So
it is. Yeah.
We can have this conversation in a way that I think invites creative problem solving that will get us to where we want to go.
I think that's a great point, because I have an entire section where I'm just talking about how the generations have lived suburbia. And you have the boomer Gen X generation that is like, man, we had so much freedom and we walked around and got soda pops as kids, and these kids on their phone, and they're like talking about environment, but they don't realize it's connected to environment. We have an entire subculture that is being created by suburbia where if your kids are even playing in their front yard, you're going to have CPS called on you if you're not there. It's wild, and this is like the way that the suburbs work as they just tear apart communities. Nobody has any trust anymore, no social trust. And we can't trust that these kids are actually going to get to a place safely. I have a 2-year-old and he's riding his pedal bike, and I am honestly scared every time I take him out to the park because my suburb doesn't even have sidewalks. Like, that's how car dependent it is. And so you tell these people who care about their children and families and want their children to have freedom, and they're like, well, I can't because the modern world is too dangerous. And I'm like, well, the modern world is the suburbs. This is the definition of modernity. We've never done this before. So let's go back to a historical way of building, and your kids can have that freedom and you can feel safe that your kids are walking around because they're not going to be hit by a car, and they're going to know their neighbors.
And the suburb world is really only 70 years old. It's not, it's not even a century yet. So we have time to change. Both of y'all talk about empathy. Chuck, you talk about empathy for the driver, and Diane, you talk about empathy for the suburbanite. And I wonder, does that include someone like the bike lane hater who we had on the show last week, who is now all of a sudden very passionate about these meetings and showing up at the meeting and talking against, making a neighborhood more of a neighborhood?
Yeah, I think it does, because personally, before I even got into urbanism, I was annoyed that my college town had narrowed their street for bikers, because as a driver, you're just irritated. The way that everything is designed, you feel like you're entitled to the road, and any type of change inconveniences you, and it's annoying. And you're just inconvenienced all the time anyway, because you have to drive everywhere. And I don't think people realize
That's
this.
That's a great point.
It's annoying. That's why I feel like the framework has to change, because everybody that comes to me that's a suburbanite, lives in this way, is like, I'm not going to bike to Costco. I'm like, I've never asked you to bike to Costco.
Right.
No, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, we should have more home economies where walkability actually makes sense. And this is the paradigm shift that I'm often struggling to get people to realize, is that the way that Walmart is and the way that Costco is isn't really the way it's supposed to be for human connection, for economy, for politics.
Taylor, can I add a distinction too? Because I have listened to you guys talk about empathy and quote me, and I just want to make sure we're saying the same thing. Empathy is not sympathy. Obviously, for people who are on bikes and look at car drivers and say, how do you not feel empowered? This whole system is designed to empower you. But if you get in their shoes, it's actually not. Driving is an incredibly frustrating thing. All the time is a demoralizing thing that people do.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think if we can start with that as like an understanding, we can craft discussions, outcomes, approaches that actually don't trigger people's deep set emotional reactions and actually help them come along for the ride with us. That's what empathy's about.
I did call the episode you were in Empathy for the Driver, and I was thinking of Sympathy for the Devil, so I could see why you thought we might be
not
mixing
sympathy.
the two.
It's very different.
I would add also to that fear.
I think the fear is justified, because if you were to take the car away, from people right now, they would really have a hard time. They're in a totally dependent system in almost every way. They're not even allowed to have chickens in their backyard. Like, they can't even make their own food in these urban environments. And so they feel that deeply. And instead of saying, oh, the car is preventing us from being self-sufficient, they're saying the car is my only way of freedom. You have to basically turn it around for them and be like, no, you being completely dependent on a corporation for you to be able to travel and for you to buy things is the problem. You need to switch your motives.
Well, that goes back to that Tom Flood quote that bicycles offer the freedom that car ads promise. Diane Alisa, the author of A Love Letter to Suburbia, and Chuck Marohn, the author of many books, the founder of Strong Towns, thank you so much for coming together with us today, but also just doing the work that you're doing on a regular basis. Nick, is there anything you want to add before we let them get back to saving the world?
Yeah, I was thinking, I don't think you've ever talked, the two of you. Mm-mm. And, I'm trying to imagine like how you would end up meeting, maybe at a book signing or something. But what would you say to each other? Like, what would you ask questions? Would either of you have a question for the other? Chuck, have you read the book yet?
No, I have a stack of books, like I could use like 20 high of like books I want to get to. And this was like in the middle of that list. And when I knew we were going to chat, I pulled it out. I've had a bunch of people recommend it to me. And so I would love to have Diane, who I now have your email address, on the Strong Towns podcast to talk about this book. I need to read it and do it justice, and then I will have tons of questions.
Sounds great.
But I just love the idea of loving a place and, wanting it, because we can all think of people that we love, things that we love, and we love them despite their hardships and their defects. And I love the framing of the book because it feels very genuine and it feels where we need to be. So I'm excited to dig into it, Diane.
Awesome.
Great.
I'm so excited too. I just admire you. I've been admiring you for the last 2 years since I discovered urbanism, and so much of your work has just enlightened things. And I've taken your work in a different direction. Like, for example, you talk about safety and the way that roads are designed, and I actually connected that to beauty. Because if a place isn't safe, then it's probably not very beautiful, and people aren't going to care if it's pretty, And so I've taken these little things and geared it in a more warm way where I can talk about it to a general audience. But I guess my question is, do you feel like it's shifting? Do you feel like the culture is moving towards environment and kind of offline?
The short answer is yes. Mm-hmm. I do. And I have to say, I felt very, very lonely in 2008 and 2009 when I started to talk about this stuff. And no, I was maybe a little crazy. The thing that is so beautiful is I do feel like my work has built off of derivations of other, like have taken other people's work and reinterpreted it and shared it. And I think what is so beautiful about what you're doing and what you've done is not that you have copied what I've done, but that you've taken it and made it your own and made it better in a lot of ways. And that's just really exciting. I do think that it's going to take lots and lots of people doing that. We always tell people, like, go share this conversation in your words with people in your place. And the more of us do that, I think the more beautiful it becomes. And at the end of the day, the more I think things are changing. So yeah, I'm really optimistic, and I'm seeing a lot of acceleration. Yeah.
Yes, I'm very optimistic. I think we're in a good direction.
I think so too.
That's a huge compliment, Diane, for Chuck. So that's great, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on Bike Talk. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting us.
Delightful.
That was Chuck Marohn of Strong Towns and Diane Alisa of A Love Letter to Suburbia. But let's talk about a bigger city, and let's talk about the idea of someone who organizes something. Jim Pocrass just talked about this. Do they have a waiver? Jim Cadenhead, Jim C., is our mechanic, but he's also the organizer of the Boston Bike Party.
It's the Bikeway Block Party. It's 3 towns in the suburbs of Boston: Arlington, Lexington, and Bedford.
Great. Well, Jim Cadenhead, welcome back to Bike Talk. Do you have people sign a waiver when they do this ride? Let me ask you that right off the bat.
It's kind of like Cyclovia in the fact that we have ideally thousands of people out at this. So nobody's signing waivers. One of the interesting things about Massachusetts is that if you are out in a park or using public space, then automatically you accept liability.
Oh,
So
that's interesting.
in the town of Lexington, they do ask for insurance, but I work on the bicycle advisory committee and I get them to sponsor the event. So we kind of get that insurance waived.
Great, great. Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was really only asking because Jim Pocrass was talking about just that topic earlier in the show. But why don't you tell us what the Bikeway Block Party is?
So the Bikeway Block Party was really inspired mostly by Cyclovia and other events that happened here that to kind of celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Minuteman Bikeway, which is about a 10-mile rail trail system that runs north out of Boston.
Right. So it's an open street event.
It's on a rail trail and it's in
Oh,
parts
even better. Yeah.
off of a rail trail. Yeah. So we already have the infrastructure there. We are just utilizing the parks along it as venues.
These words, these names, Arlington, Lexington, the Minuteman Bike Trail is just taking me through the revolutionary period of American history.
It definitely should. We were sponsored last year by the 250th anniversary committee because this year, 2025, is the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's famous ride, and Lexington and Concord are where those first battles took place.
Wow.
Has anybody recreated that on a bike?
This past April, we recreated Paul Revere's ride on April the 18th. So we
Wow.
went out a couple hours before I think the horses did and the folks that were actually coming from the North Church. So
Wow. You know, I have a question. Did they come by land or by sea? Was it one lantern or two lanterns?
2 lanterns.
So they came by sea.
So technically they were marching, but they came by sea and deposited them in Charlestown. So if they had gone by land, they would have marched farther around.
Okay, so how was the block party?
The block party was awesome. We had 8 different venues, over 30 different artists and facilitators, and we did everything. We had yoga with live harp in multiple sessions. We had dance, we had Bollywood dance, we had Shine fitness dance, and we had dance in with kids. We had mariachis, we had brass bands, reggae bands, blues bands, Americana bands. We had a modular and synth festival at one of the parks. We had sea shanties, Irish sessions, you name it.
Is this all coming out of you?
Basically, we look for artists, ideally locally, who feel comfortable donating some time, but also we had an incredible reggae band, Roots Alley Collective, a nationally recognized band, so there were bands that we paid. That happened Sunday, September 14th this year, and the last one was Sunday, September 15th in 2024.
Oh, well, why don't you come on before the ride and tell us about this?
That's the idea.
He did.
Yes.
He told us one of the last times he was on.
Oh, okay.
Jim is
Wow.
also our mechanical expert who comes on once a month.
Yeah, but he's not a really good timing expert.
Yeah, that's what the chain's for.
Exactly. Well, Jim Cadenhead, thanks a lot for telling us about it. It sounds really great. And next year, come August, give us some heads up because we'd really like to spread the word. It's such a great idea that can be replicated in any city around the country, you know, whether it be on open streets like Cyclovia or on trails and paths like you guys did in Boston.
Cyclovia was the catalyst. And a lot of that came about from, there was Bike Summer in Los Angeles. And that was in, when was that, 2008 or, no, it was before that. It was.
I feel it was maybe 2004.
It's amazing how good ideas spread. So
yeah, that Bike Summer had an international consortium of folks that came and talked about good ideas. And folks from Colombia came up and were talking about Cyclovia. And so we had a working group that for years was working on doing Cyclovia in Los Angeles before the first one ever started. And I ended up moving the year the first one happened. So I missed it. But the idea is what was behind getting these little venues out of these parks, kind of turning these into spots. And I hope that people do this in other places, because one of the things that I think it does more than anything was bring together the community at a time where we can all celebrate the things that we love. And we had thousands of people out listening to free music, dancing, enjoying everything from mariachis to African drum circles. And it was incredible.
Well, Jim C., thanks again.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
That was Jim Cadenhead. And, if Jim C. can get a ride like that going, Nick, I got to tell you, it makes me think anybody can get a ride similar to that going in their own town.
Jim is a exceptional individual.
Absolutely. And a long-term advocate, right?
But yeah, it's inspiring.
Yeah, I didn't mean to imply that if Jim can do it, anybody can do it. I meant if Jim has the wherewithal to get it done, other people can follow that model.
Yeah.
Well, there are other things besides Revolutionary War, things that you can do on a bike. And one of them is bird watching. And, we often talk about mass transit and how to use mass transit. And Stacey Randecker, who's been on the show a million times and did our bike thought for the longest time, did a report about a really cool mass transit bird watching bike ride. I think it was in April of this year in Berkeley, California.
It's Stacey. I'm back, and I'm here with Heath Maddox of Bay Area Rapid Transit, our transit in San Francisco, and Mo Gevirtz. Heath, do you want to give us a little background?
Sure. Well, so first of all, yeah, I work at BART and I'm in the customer access and accessibility department, and I manage bike access for BART. So when anybody ever has a question about bikes within BART or outside of BART, they come to me. I'd like to say I'm the chief bike nerd at BART. And BART has a book club, the BART Book Club. This spring, the book club is like a field guide. It's called Bay Area Wildlife, an Irreverent Guide. It's about urban wildlife, animals that you can see around, in the close to urban areas at the urban fringes.
This is a BART book club.
Correct.
Super cool. And this is the book of the year.
They chose this book for this year's book club book. And there are a lot of activities around the book club. And they reached out to me as the chief bike nerd at BART to see if I had any ideas around like how we could organize an outing that involved animals and biking. And I was like scratching my head. I'm like, well, the Bay Trail makes a lot of sense because BART is close to the Bay Trail, and the Bay is where there's a lot of wildlife, especially aquatic wildlife, birds. So I was like, let's do a birding, biking outing, because I know there's a lot of, bike nerds and a lot of bird nerds in the Bay Area, and I know many of them. I live in Berkeley on the waterfront, and it's close to BART. And I was like, I'm not a birder, but I knew there were a lot of places to go. And I sort of pitched this idea to some friends and acquaintances, and among them was Mo, who's a newish member of the BART Bicycle Advisory Task Force, is the official term for the body. And Mo was all over it, and we just kind of went from there. It was a smashing success, large part due to Mo's enthusiasm and expertise. And we got a lot of people out there on the waterfront on June 26th and had a good time and saw a lot of birds.
That's awesome. So Mo, tell us, are you more knowledgeable on bikes or on birds or BART or all?
I am a member of the BART Bicycle Advisory Task Force. I am, unfortunately, very much a jack of all trades. My main area of expertise actually is linguistics. I've been a bird watcher from a very young age, 18, and a love interest of mine opened the doors to me. And then I realized there were a lot of other people trying to show me that there's a lot out there in the world. And what birds are a really great way to get started because they're fairly social beings, and their audio, their calls match well with human social listening and behavior. And they're very colorful. So they're a very great way to get into the natural world. We've been divorced from the natural world for over a century, very strongly in our society. And so I started paying attention, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wow. You start hearing familiar voices, and you're, much less isolated. There's little stories happening all around you at all times if you're just listening, even in a noisy city like New York. Of course, we live here in the East Bay, which is suburbs, which has room for greenery. I wound up studying a little bit of ornithology, and I had a bird watching company when I was in my early 20s. And well, BART, I just joined the advisory task force, and this opportunity came up. I'd actually been rattling around about the idea of BART to nature. I have a sailboat in the Berkeley Marina, and I sail a lot. And especially during COVID, I spent a lot of time checking out McLaughlin.
It's a state park right down there by the water.
MC McLaughlin, Laughin, named after, I think, Edith McLaughlin. It's this tiny remnant. It's on a landfill.
Do you bike to McLaughlin?
Yeah, it's highly accessible from BART.
It's right on the Bay Trail, too.
From North Berkeley BART to McLaughlin, it might be a 10-minute bike ride downhill, a little narrow hill. And you get there and you'll see white-tailed kites, you'll see barn owls if you're there at night and on a full moon, black oyster catchers with these brilliant red bills, and you hear different warblers calling, and there's obviously mammals and stuff going on. They restored it to be kind of like the meadowlands that were here prior to the industrialization of the area, actually prior to cattle ranching, really. So there's ceanothus and coyote and, a nice mix of native-ish species. Five Creeks, this organization that is trying to revive the tiny vestiges of our creek system here in the East Bay, has done some work putting in natives. It's such an opportunity. And the thing is, it's faster to bike there because there's always so much traffic, especially on weekends with people going to Cesar Chavez, that you just sneak in and then you sneak out on your bike.
That is the hack I wish everybody understood. I always cut to the front of the line, so it's faster.
It's amazing. People accelerate up to a stop sign or a stoplight past you.
So when you were doing this tour, you were biking from like grove of trees to grove of trees or something?
Oh, the logistics of this. It's actually it reflects the world of cars in a funny way. Ideally, when you're bird watching, you don't want to be on a bike, actually. Because it is an awkwardness, especially if you have a large crowd. We had large crowds. This thing was very popular. I mean, there's enormous pent-up demand for this in the Bay Area.
We had to add a second event because the first one topped out, I think, at like 20 or something. And we're like, it's a big group. And so we added an earlier event. So we were out there for like 4 hours.
We did a lot of work in the logistics here. We'll work closely to lay out a route, and then we practice the route. So with the bicycle thing, ideally, here's what you do. You want to replace car birding with bike birding, right? Which is, in terms of surveillance, much better. With car birding, you're always like, oh, stop! And you slam on the brakes. And if you survive that, you're looking for this bird that you just scared off. With biking, it's sweet. You bike along, and you know there's a place to observe things. And you put your bikes down. Transitioning is fairly easy, and you put up your binoculars, and you look, and you kind of wander around that area. You get back in your bikes, and you go another half a mile, quarter mile, 1,000 feet, and you put your bikes down. And then you look around, and the whole time you're listening, you're seeing stuff. There's no canopy over your head blocking all the sky views, so you can monitor the whole sky.
Okay, like car birding is a thing?
Oh
my
man,
goodness.
it's so sad.
That sounds awful. Like,
With this trip with BART Bike Bird, let's call it, we pick up people at North Berkeley BART, and we bike along the urban route, cross the bridge, and then we find a place and we stop. And we look around and we engage with everything around there, and we spend 10 minutes. There's so much to see and so much to do. Show people a cool tobacco plant and how they've got nectar at the bottom, and show them these different birds on the shoreline. Turn around, there's turkeys. Look up in the sky, there's a kite, a kind of predator that hovers in the air and then drops on the mice. Okay, and then you get on your bike and you move along. The traditional way that 99.99999% of birding is done today in America is you all pile into a car and you drive to some far off place and you park, and then you walk around and you get back into the car and you drive to some other place, and then it's actually logistically the same thing, but you spend all this time in the vehicle. And what people wind up doing, you'll see this in country roads in particularly sensitive bird areas, everyone's sitting in their car looking out the window, because you can't park the car and kind of walk long enough and then come back to the car. It's just hard to do that. So you wind up birding from the car and like suddenly stopping and jumping out real quick. Oh my God, there's something or other.
Oh my gosh, I am not a birder, and now I think I have to be just because I want to defeat car birding. That just seems so wrong. BART and bicycle is the way.
The bike birding has been amazing in California.
Or bus or whatever someone's transit option may be in the area, but the car part, that hurts. What's the plan for the future? Is this going to be a regular? What's BART going to do, Heath?
The idea of the book club and then the outing, it's like a really conscious effort by BART to rebrand BART as not something that's just for commuting. It's for recreational and it's leisure trips.
Heck, you have speed dating on there.
Right, exactly. It's
fashion totally, shows.
Yeah, so you've been following our efforts because BART was originally, envisioned, it was built in the 60s and opened in the 70s around bringing people from the periphery to the tip of the San Francisco Peninsula in speed and style and comfort to get them to work. And now, especially post-COVID, things have changed and commute patterns have changed and people aren't, coming in such great numbers and such great regularity to the tip of the San Francisco Peninsula. And so BART is really having to look at a new revenue model, a new ridership model, and open our doors, and open our trains to people and open people's minds around what transit is and what it's for. That's what this is. We're trying to get more people. And so bikes especially are a key demographic. Bike people are demographic for BART. And they were some of the people who stuck with us the longest during COVID, and some of the people who came back first after the worst of the pandemic was over. So BART's going to continue to promote and things like this, not just the bike nerds, but the communications department and other divisions within BART. But I should let Mo talk about BART to Nature.
Yeah, so I stuck with BART, the biking throughout the COVIDs. But there's a reason for this. It all boils down to logistics and cost of travel. You can check the Department of Energy's or the Department of Transportation statistics on what the average cost of travel in the United States is, where the average is car ownership. And I live in one of the most expensive places on the planet. I don't spend that kind of money on transportation. Why? Because I have a bicycle. I have two. I have a folding bicycle and a big touring one. And I just bike down to BART, hop on the BART, go where I need to go, show up. And then the first and last mile is my bicycle. My fiance does the same. It's just easy to get around. And with the folding bike, it goes easily on the bus, easy in an Uber, no problem. When you have a bicycle or some scooter or just your feet and a train system like this, heavy rail like this, there's so many opportunities. And for me, BART has opened up opportunities to really connect with nature, both like vestiges of native, semi-undisturbed stuff and also green space in the Bay Area. Why aren't people using BART more? It's a better deal for a lot of the trips they're taking right now with their cars are more convenient and much less expensive on BART. Why don't people know about this? Google Maps, when you open it up, does not tell you what the better deal is. It routes you straight onto the car and then does a poor job of explaining how to use the train system and the bus system, disconnected as it may be. They claim they can put you on the moon with their software. They can't solve a routing problem. What's going on there?
Or mixed modes. That's my frustration.
Exactly.
I add a bike to those transit options. Yes. And I'm doing this stuff manually. Yeah, we shouldn't have to.
No, we shouldn't. The issue comes down to people and culture. And what can I do? What can we do to help people connect with something we're missing, our connection to nature, help them do it affordably, enjoyably, sociably? How can we show them to use BART, creating these amazing opportunities like the Bike BART Bird thing with Jeff Miller's amazing book? Their minds were blown because you're so connected. You're having this great social activity and you're moving your body and it was easy to get there because you used a train. Well, let's amplify that. Let's find all these different opportunities, rate them by difficulty, create storied experiences. You go on this ride and your mind is blown. You hear about history, you hear about culture, you hear about nature, you hear about animals. You get connected and rooted where you live, all because of the BART system, making the logistics super simple. And so the committee is working on finding, the next two, let's say, opportunities to put together a ride, to create a story, to put materials together to show people a phenomenal flipping time. And in the process, they wind up seeing a different way to use BART and connecting to where they live.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pent-up demand for this.
We should have these things on our calendar, on our site, to link to, whatever people's regional bike event calendars are. It would be cool if we could do that on Bike Talk. As much as I love to ride bikes, I am not seeking out these kind of things. But if they fall into my lap like this, I'm like, ooh, I should do that. Well, this is so great, Mo and Heath. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to hearing about more bike and BART trips.
We'll keep you posted.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. And that's the end of the show.
I think so. Yeah. We want to thank Jim Pocrass, Chuck Marohn, Diane Alisa, Jim Cadenhead, and Stacey Randecker. And of course, all the people that have been writing in great listener emails. They really let us know that you're listening and what you're getting from the show, and help us find more really interesting interviews of people that are involved in the bike world.
This episode's quote is from you, right, Taylor? You came up with a one-liner or something?
You know, I went to Soul Cycle with some buddies of mine. I've done a cycling class before, but I've never done a soul cycling class. And I got to tell you, it was a great workout. I sweat amazing. The music was really fun. I was whipped after the hour-long class. But I did have this feeling that Soul Cycle is to riding a bike what foosball is to soccer, meaning it's very different from riding a bike on the road, but you get in a really good workout.
Let's hear from all those stationary bike riders.
There you go. Yeah.
Let's get some of them worked up.
Well, you know, I ride rollers. Have you ever ridden rollers?
I don't, but I have.
It's hard. I don't do it very often because you really have to concentrate, but that is like riding a bike.
Huh.
Yeah. Well, we want to thank our regulars.
Julie Richard, Josh Haglund, Stacey Randecker, Lindsay Sturman, Charlie Lighthizer, and Amy Ziering.
Ride safe.
This episode of Bike Talk is sponsored by the law offices of Pocrass and De Los Reyes, with offices in Los Angeles and Bakersfield, and serving all of Southern California.
Bike Talk is a project of CRSP and the Los Angeles Eco-Village Institute. And that was Bike Talk. If you have a story, a tip, or a topic, head over to biketalk.org and send us a message. Talk again next week.
Let your mind unwind. Live its life, pretend to life. Better get yourself a bike. Get on your bike. Sit on the seat, put your feet on the pedal, and run it all around, run it all around. Get on your bike, sit on the seat, put your feet on the pedal, and run it all around, run it all around. Get that car out of my way, I wanna ride my bike today. Keep me fit, get me there, I won't go stinking up the alley behind the daily grind. Let your mind unwind, live its life, pretend to life. Better get yourself a bike. Got yourself a bike. Oh, 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 got yourself a bike.